Forgot I restarted the computer, so I don't have my notes handy.
James Brown. Oh my god.
What?
You ever just blank on a name? Like, do you know who you're talking about?
What are you talking about, James Brown?
When I said like, taking uppers before the interview, it just reminded me of that James Brown interview. It's like really popular on YouTube, where he's just high out of his mind and talking about he's being interviewed for this week just for Wilson's wife because he's Peter.
Yeah.
And the entire interview he just talks in song titles, like his song titles specifically.
Wow.
So she's like, "How you doing?" He's like, "I feel good." It's a man's world.
That's hilarious. It's on YouTube?
Yeah.
Is it like from the 80s or something?
Yeah, it's pretty old.
Like his crack years, like he was fucking lit up?
He's actually might be like before his like peak crack years.
Okay.
I'm not sure like when exactly, because I know there are those mugshots where like those are definitely his crack years.
Yeah.
Like he still has his hair still looks good. I mean, James Brown good. He's got those like pre-Bono glasses.
Yeah.
That are basically just like shop glasses. Like protection.
Like the senior citizen. Like,
yeah, they're like.
I just went to the eye doctor and got my pupils dilated.
They're just completely orange.
Like visor.
Yeah. It's so weird.
I can't talk too much bad about James Brown. That guy was a fucking legend.
Oh, James Brown's awesome. You knock him.
You ready to do this?
Yeah. I don't know what we're going to talk about, though.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another exciting edition of Between You, Me, and Jose. We took a break last week, a short hiatus. We had some scheduling conflicts going on. We had a show here on the night that we usually record, so had to skip a week. But we're back, better than ever. And before we get started, I just wanted to let everybody know you can subscribe to Between You, Me, and Jose on iTunes now, and you should. Unless you like the video version of the podcast, which you can still get on YouTube. You should subscribe to our channel, like our videos, give us some props, comment on shit. It helps more people find out about the podcast, so if you enjoy it, please just take a few seconds to help us out and help spread the word about BYMJ. Trying to get some awesome guests lined up for you in the next few months. We're going to keep this thing going every week, and we're going to hopefully be delivering some heat. So get subscribed, follow us, and tell all your friends about it. And that was our little PSA. So we're going to roll into it. This week we have a very special guest. You might recognize him from previous podcasts as a co-host, but this week he's in the hot seat. Mr. Phil Cala, also known as Future Shapes. It's a solo project, Future Shapes, right?
Yeah.
It's like a one-man band. You're playing everything?
Yeah, I do, and I have friends who want to collaborate, come in and play stuff that I either need other people to play for me because I don't have enough hands or enough pedals, or just want to have them come in and play because it's fun to play with your friends. I like a collective feel, you know, just have sort of like a Fred Armisen on the new late night. Someone new is always in the band, like Dinosaur Jr. guy or Marnie Stern. I like that kind of thing.
So when did you start the Future Shapes project?
Actually, I started recording stuff under the name Future Shapes while I was still in my old band that is no longer. And I think it was when the XX started putting stuff out.
Okay.
And I kind of got into that minimal feel.
Yeah.
And I kind of just thought, oh, I could, like, all my stuff is in the practice space, but I have a DL pedal here and a little tiny, like, garage sale keyboard and, like, a really crummy guitar. Let's see what kind of minimal stuff I can make. And I recorded a few songs and just sort of put them on the internet, and they just sort of sat there. And a few years later, like, no, probably just like 2 years later, after my my previous band Bears broke up, I decided, well, actually, like, I kind of stumbled upon those demos again. I thought, well, actually, I like this name. I remember the kind of concept that I had back then, and let's see where this project goes. And so this year is when I really started kicking it back into gear. So.
And so when you play out live with the Future Shapes music, are you bringing some friends along to play, or are you just doing it all sort of on the fly?
So it depends on where I'm playing. Actually, I cater every set to the venue. So every show is actually totally different. So like we just played at the Chapel Bar, and I had my buddy Steven playing drums, and also he played guitar on a few songs, and that was the first time anyone had that was the first time it was ever like a two-piece guitar and drums thing. And then there was another show at the Depot over at San Francisco State, where I had a full band play. I had
cool.
I was on guitar, my buddy Steven was playing guitar, and had a drummer and a bassist. And then there have been a few shows where it's just me, guitar, and pedals. So it actually, short answer is totally depends on where I'm playing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're making music as a solo artist, is it more daunting or is it more freeing to be able to have the complete control, as opposed to having a band setting where you're kind of bouncing ideas off each other, and one person may be playing some random riff and you hear it and go, aha, let's start with that. Is it more of a challenge for you to work as just you, or is it more freeing?
In a way, it's a lot more freeing, because I mean, you get to everything is you. There's no questions. There's no one sort of texting when they should be paying attention, or
right.
There's no grief from anyone else. But then at the same time, like for instance, I'll be in the practice space, and I wish I could play everything at once instead of just like looping some things. And in that sense, it's sort of it's limiting. It really limits the amount that you can do.
Right.
And I will write demos out sort of in that fashion, where I'll record a part sort of on the fly, and then record over that layers and layers, and sort of pull things apart and put them together to make songs. But I think if it's sort of like being in a relationship, like when you're in a bad one, you realize how great it is to be single. And then when you've been single for too long, you realize, oh, being in a relationship's not so bad. Like, it has its ups and its downs, and it's sort of there's always going to be, for me, I'd rather be playing with a full band. That's kind of the kind of music I grew up listening to. It's not, I mean, I have appreciation for everything, but when it comes down to it, like, that's what I make, and that's what comes out of me.
So are you writing with the idea that this is eventually going to be played by people in a live setting?
Yeah, definitely.
Is there ever a tendency or an inclination to just get like super complex with it and do stuff that, like, you wouldn't even be able to reproduce?
Oh, yeah, actually, there are a few demos that I have that I don't even remember how to play anymore, unfortunately. And it's not even, I kind of describe my sound as Shitwave, because it's sort of just a joke, because I don't know how to describe anything, really. And
Right.
I think most people are bullshitting when they describe their favorite bands.
Yeah.
Oh, it's like post whatever,
Yeah.
hardcore, like
I don't know,
gingerbread
man.
house.
Genres are just like crazy to me.
Yeah, a
'Cause
lot
I
of them-
like, I mean, I've come from electronic music is what I was primarily into, and the fucking genres that like have come up for no real reason. It's like someone will do the exact same style as someone else, but like utilize only 808 kick drums, and then all of a sudden this is like a different genre of music. I'm like, it's not fucking different, people. Let's like let's keep it simple.
I feel like an old man. I just found out what trap music is like a couple weeks ago, and I didn't really see much of a difference between trap music and some other kinds of electronic.
I think it's, well, to me the whole trap music thing is like doesn't make sense to me because I have an association with what trap music means, like as a hip hop fan and like someone who's into Southern hip hop and has been listening to certain kinds of artists who like, you know, the type of music that they made is trap music.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it was categorized as, because it was mostly people that were drug dealers when they weren't rapping, and a trap house is where you keep your stash, or a trap car is where you like, you know, have a car with compartments that you put your weed in or your coke or whatever. And the trap house is like, you know, the flop house basically that you operate out of. And so the music was very evocative of that setting and that lifestyle. So whenever people talk about trap music, I'm like, really? You guys are like finally getting hip to like, you know, some of these Southern artists? And they're like, no, it's like EDM, which is another term that I fucking hate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's EDM. It's not.
Yeah, my friend played me some trap music, and it was just about dancing.
Like what?
Definitely was not about what you just explained.
No, I mean, I think it's was influenced by that, but from what I can gather, it's like the dubstep influenced by Southern hip hop, like, you know, where the it's like superficial influences, like 16th hi-hats, like, you know, on every track or something like that. I don't know. I'm talking out of my ass because I don't fucking listen to trap music, at least not that I know of. So, yeah, I don't really know. I don't understand. I'm kind of like an old man in this situation as well. Y'all kids don't know what the Aphex Twins are.
Aphex Twins, right? But yeah, I call it Shitwave just because it's like the way I used to record and kind of still do record, because I like the sound of it. It was so lo-fi that you just could not make anything out, and it wasn't the kind of shoegazy everything blends together. It was just awful quality. And now it's more of the latter, but I know there's a lot of things that I can't pick out, and I have to like really go into those demos and pull out the stems and like listen to it over again and be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's how you do it. But also like constantly writing new things, and I feel like that's what I'm trying to do, working on new projects.
So like, you were before Future Shapes, or, you know, concurrently with the idea of Future Shapes, you were in another band, Bears.
Yeah.
And had you been in bands before that?
Yeah, actually, I in high school played drums in a band. We were called Batman Parade versus Frank.
Nice.
We were a very long name, and
dude, I've heard longer.
Yeah.
I just had a band play here the other day. Their name is "The World is a Beautiful Place and I Am No Longer Afraid to Die." Having to write that on every fucking flyer and like in the fields with limited characters, like
that is
Twitter
such
or something.
Weird name, but I love it.
It's not bad. I mean, I don't have a problem with the name. It's just practically speaking, like you're taking up my character count, bro.
How do you tweet that to someone?
Yeah. Well, the other option is like super generic band names, like I'll never understand, like fun, boy, girls. It's like, how do you expect people to search for your fucking band? Like, it doesn't really make sense. Like,
that's something that bands need to think about, is how can someone find you? Like
Yeah.
my old band was called Bears, Bears, Bears.
Right.
And we were from the San Francisco Bay Area. So if you imagine someone searching San Francisco Bears, Bears, Bears,
Yeah.
we were
You'll
not
come
the
up with some
first.
interesting
We were
things.
not the first
Yeah.
hit.
You'll get some ads for the Eagle, Powerhouse,
Yeah.
perhaps.
We should have changed our names to the Power Bottoms. We should.
The Power Bottoms.
Yeah, the Power Bottoms.
Were you here when you were talking about the
Yeah,
Power
I'm pretty
Bottoms?
sure.
Okay.
Yeah, Power Bottoms.
But ultimately, how did you get interested in music? Did you have like a musical family, or did you come to it on your own?
So, I do have a musical family actually. I grew up listening to my uncle play piano every Christmas, like Charlie Brown and Styx actually. Sail
Nice.
Sail Away, right?
Uh-huh.
And my grandfather played guitar, and I tried learning on his guitar for the longest time, and I stopped. But then one day I heard this. This sounds so lame, and I heard the Strokes
Uh-huh.
when I was really young.
Yeah.
Room on Fire came out. It's like
Yeah.
I want to do that.
A lot of people talk shit on the Strokes.
They do.
Like, I mean, their first album was excellent,
Oh, yeah.
I think. Second album, to me, doesn't hold up as well.
Room on Fire, really? Oh, I meant
The
is
second
this it?
album.
Was the first one was
This
the
is-
second was Room on Fire.
Room on Fire,
Really?
like, some songs are still good. Some of them are kind of like sounding not great. And after that, I just was not interested anymore.
Mm.
But that first album is fucking awesome.
Yeah,
still.
it's
like,
perfect.
but a lot of people talk shit on this. I don't know, that people say they're ripping off other artists, or that you just sound like you're trying to be, the Velvet Underground or something like that, which they don't sound anything like the Velvet Underground.
No, they don't.
But they were trying to recapture a sound that had kind of fallen out of favor, and to me, that's not out of bounds. If someone else isn't doing that anymore, then you should be able to pick it up and do it. Like, there's a difference between ripping off someone who like is still out there doing their thing, and ripping off someone who is long done with it. Like, I don't like Madonna at all, because I feel like she rips off artists that are still like making music and not as popular as her, and she like basically steps over their cold dead bodies in order to prop herself up. People like Bjork and even Kylie Minogue and shit like that, like, she's just blatantly ripping off their styles, and they're still doing it. So it's like, what the fuck is your problem? But I don't know, that to me there's a big difference between like revisiting something long past.
No, I totally agree. I think a great example is a band like Tame Impala. Their sound is nothing new, but it's such a fresh take on like on the past. To me, it's just everything about them is just perfect, and it's like the old but new, like just made better. To me, I feel like that's a great example.
What are you trying to embody with your music? Like, do you have let me put it like this. There are some bands, myself included, who it's very conceptual. Like, I'll be trying to make music that tells a certain story or is evocative of a certain thing and has somewhat of a narrative quality, even though it's instrumental usually. Some bands like Coheed and Cambria, they have like a whole science fiction universe that they've created, that their music is telling stories from this universe. And one of the great local bands that we're going to have on in the next few episodes, Curious Quail, they do the same thing. It's a lot of their stuff is based on this sort of dystopian future story that one of the guys has created. So are you like trying to create something very narrative like that, or capture more of an emotional response, or what's going through your head when you're sitting down and writing and recording music? Since you are, for the most part, by yourself, complete creative freedom, nobody to tell you, oh, I think this would be better like this or something like that. What's going through your mind when you're recording?
So it's definitely not a narrative, or if it is, it just kind of turns out to be. I've never been into the idea of making concept albums, and I could never be in a band like the Aquabats or the Phenomenauts or something like that, where
Right.
like it's fun. I love that, but I personally couldn't do that. For when I write and record stuff, it's sort of like everything is really just on the fly. It's sort of like almost like painting. I'm just sort of throwing colors at the canvas, and I sing whatever comes out. Sort of just is there, and it's like that's what's supposed to be there, and if it sticks, then it sticks, and if it doesn't, then something else will. And I try to, I guess, shit out whatever I think is supposed to be there.
Shitwave, bro.
Yeah, shitwave, bro.
Have you ever gone and sort of analyzed yourself based on the art that you create?
Yeah,
Like,
it's really depressing.
is it?
Kind of.
Well, what did you learn about yourself, or what did you start to pick up on, like common themes, things that you return to a lot?
I mean, for I guess one thing that I did like about like my album with Bears was that it was a lot of just dealing with self-identity, like who am I as a person. Like it dealt with just trying to figure yourself out and your surroundings out. And I don't know, I listen to a lot of bands in the area that they'll do concept stuff, or they do very biased political agenda things, or just we get drunk and which is fun. I love Fiddler, but and not every song needs to be about how you like to get drunk. We all like to get drunk, right? But I don't need to listen to a whole album about it. I sound like such an asshole.
You fucking dick.
I love you, Fiddler.
Fuck.
Fiddler brings out all of the terrible things in me, actually.
It's cool, man.
They're cool.
No judge. You're free to express yourself here.
But yeah, there's the whole, art. You do art to connect and figure out what it is to be human, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think. I don't know if that's what everybody thinks. There's like a large movement within the last few generations that more and more music and art in general has just become a commodity, and it's not really about that magical aspect, or that self-analysis aspect, or delving deeper. It's all become very surface, and to serve a goal, to sell units, and it's all become very, very stagnant in a way. And that's obviously not everything, because there are some amazing artists out there doing crazy things,
definitely
taking it to new levels,
taking out their ribs.
Allegedly. But there's have you ever heard of the band Psychotica?
No.
90s band. They're kind of still around. I've seen them play within the last few years. I saw them open for Tool, like in the late 90s. So they're that kind of band, not as proggy as Tool, but... And the lead singer is very theatrical, reminds me a lot of like Hedwig and the Angry Inch, like someone that would have come out of that movie. And the rumors were that he had cut his own penis off.
Whoa! For what purpose?
Allegedly.
Like Van Gogh, like give it to his girlfriend or something?
It's probably not true. It's probably like a, sensationalist media piece from the days of, the early days of the internet or whatever, but supposedly he cut his own dick off.
Maybe it was
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Maybe it was one of those body mod kind of things.
And then there's the rumors that Marilyn Manson removed a rib or something like
Oh yeah,
that.
the ribs to suck his own penis, right?
That's
Wasn't
the
it?
rumor.
Give himself.
I don't think it's true though. I mean, like I said, allegedly, I can neither confirm nor deny, but it sounds crazy. Sounds not true to me.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I don't know if I even want to know, actually. I don't know, but props to him if he could pull that off, I guess, because I couldn't.
Well, I think the proof.
Literally pull it off. Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. I mean, the man has released many albums, directed movies, acted in movies. He does paintings and watercolors and all that kind of shit. If you could suck your own dick, you would not be that productive.
I don't. Yeah, maybe.
Just
probably,
saying.
Probably
Just saying.
wouldn't. I'd be at home right now. Actually, yeah. Huh. but yeah, I like dealing with those kind of topics, not sucking your own dick topics,
Yeah.
but what we were talking about earlier. Because I feel like everyone has that album where, or that song where they heard it and they felt like, oh my God, there's someone else in the world that felt that way, or I've never thought of this topic that way, or I've never thought of like this thing in my life that way, or
Yeah.
something that's makes people feel. You know?
Well, who was it for you that evoked that feeling in you? Like in your early days, what was the sort of musical epiphany where you heard something and went, fuck, this is, and you realized the power of that music can have?
I have had a few of those. There were a few paradigm shifts for me in music, and the first one was definitely the Strokes, and I always think that's kind of weird because my mom always played fantastic music growing up. So in the car, like even in the baby seat, I was listening to stuff like The Who, like Kansas, or great rock bands from the day. My mom grew up listening to the Police. My sister was really into like Smashing Pumpkins, like back in their prime.
Of course.
So I had great music around me, but then for some reason it was just the Strokes that really lit a fire. And then from there I started scrounging around looking for other bands, and that was sort of like the gateway drug. I found like bands like Interpol and everything from that genre. You start listening to stuff like Joy Division, and I think the next real paradigm shift was when I've heard the Blood Brothers for the first time.
Huh.
And that band made me start to sing.
Really?
Start to sing and drum. And then from the Blood Brothers, I started listening to the Locusts, and I would just spend hours, like 5 hours a day, in my room with a drum set, practicing and trying to keep up with both Mark and Gabe from the Blood Brothers and Locusts, respectively. It was bad. I would keep a bucket next to the drum set because I'd eventually vomit. And I would read these stories about how Gabe would play until his knuckles bled, and there'd be photos online of his snare drum covered in blood. And I'm a 14-year-old kid. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cool.
That's badass.
Yeah, that is so badass. And as I'm wearing, all black and my even longer emo hair back
Naturally.
then. Yeah, and and then stuff like Bowie, and there's too much out there actually to even, and there were a lot of things that just came out at the right time. Like some even like the Killers' Hot Fuss came out at a perfect time. A lot of stuff back then actually did. I don't like the Killers outside of Hot Fuss, but that album kind of came out at the perfect time. Just saying.
Yeah, it was kind of a culmination of a lot of styles that were getting very popular at that time, and they came around and kind of just nailed it on the head, and unfortunately got super fucking popular for it. Yeah,
he's kind of, I don't know,
kind of a douche.
Yeah.
You didn't hear it from me.
You didn't hear it from us.
No.
Brandon Flowers, totally not an awful man.
No.
He's
allegedly not an awful man at all.
Yeah, allegedly. No.
Terrible. But so you came up in this sort of interesting time where music was hearkening back to a previous era, like a lot of bands at that time were referencing like Joy Division, Gang of Four, a lot of the 80s stuff that hadn't really been retread yet. Coincidentally, that genre didn't really last, and like from what I understand, like all the bands that were huge at that time, they're not that huge anymore. Like maybe the Killers are still big, but like I don't hear new Killers songs very often. Franz Ferdinand is like, you know, not really as popular as they were at that time. The Strokes, you know, a lot of these bands, they didn't have that staying power.
Yeah, when was the last time you heard like a Yeah Yeah Yeahs song?
Wow, yeah. I mean,
that was another
big
band for me.
I have heard the theme song to Orange is the New Black, which is Regina Spektor, but it sounds exactly like Karen O.
It does, doesn't it?
It kind of like, I don't know, it like annoys me, but when you hear shit so like jammed into your head repeatedly, you kind of start to like it.
That intro is way too long, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
As once Breaking Bad, you know, broke the mold and was like, no, intros are going to be 5 seconds long. Right. Just a cool little, like, you know, logo, and then we're going to go into it. Now I just, like, if Game of Thrones, if that intro wasn't so cool, I wouldn't be cool with it.
No, you can't fuck with the Game of Thrones intro. Because the song is awesome. Because
everyone sings it,
The visuals are awesome. And they change it up every time.
Yeah, they do.
Not every time, but, you know, every few episodes when they add a new city, you'll see it in there.
HBO knows how to do it.
They not all their intros, but a lot of their intros are really awesome. Like, did you watch that show Carnival?
No.
You gotta watch Carnival. It's one of their best shows.
Okay.
They fucked it over in the end because it was supposed to be. It was like this huge 6-season arc that was all planned out. It got 2 seasons, so like that was the end of like the first stage. Then the 3 and 4 would be the second stage, and then it would culminate with the last 2 seasons. But the guy that they had that came up with the series was not like a Hollywood superstar, so they didn't trust him with it. And I don't know, they just kind of fucked it over and didn't want to spend the money. But if they had kept that shit going, like the double whammy of Game of Thrones followed by Carnival, like episodes back to back, would have been fucking amazing.
That would have been cool.
That's one of their best fucking shows, and the intro is really awesome.
Did you watch True Detective?
I did watch True Detective, yeah.
I loved True Detective.
I thought it was okay. I liked it at first, and then I kind of like, I feel like they fucked around a little too much and like ended up not really digging into the like meaty stuff that would have made it great. Like the first few episodes were a really slow pace. I thought that it was just going to be this slow building show, kind of like The Wire or something, where like over time you start to like really put everything together. But it was so short. Like you start off really slow and then you've wasted half the season, and then you're like running through the second half, and it's like, oh, this cult is out there, but we're not going to touch on that. We're just going to hint at it, and we're going to go over here. Oh, there's this crazy guy on a lawnmower, and he talks funny. Like, why? Who knows? He like is.
But he was creepy.
He was creepy.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Why was
creepy.
he talking like a British man?
I have no fucking idea. Nobody knows.
No one knows. But that's kind of awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely down. The acting was awesome. The mood was awesome, and I can respect people who want to just like give it their all. Like, even if I don't like a show, ultimately I have so much respect for people that have a vision and are passionate about it and see it through. And you could tell that the people making that show wanted to make the best fucking show that they could make. And that's so rare nowadays. Such utter shit is just churned out all the time.
Oh yeah.
It kills me. And people love it. And that's the part that really fucks me up. Is that people won't realize the depth of something because they're not immediately caught up in the superficiality of it.
People have gotten trained to get these like Family Guy quips,
Yeah.
and they sort of miss out on, the Game of Thrones or the Breaking Bads or.
Yeah. I'm actually really, really surprised that so many people are into Game of Thrones.
Yeah, me too, actually.
And I don't know what it is that they're into. Like, I mean, obviously the titties, like that, you can get really base level and be like, oh, well, they just watch it for the sex or, I guess the, like, characters, even though, not many of the characters are likable. So I know they're not watching it for, like, the complex social commentary and, like, the interpersonal relationships and the nature of humanity and all that shit.
Mhm.
So I'm not quite sure why they're so into it.
I'm not surprised that people are into it because it is a great show, and I think I'm not giving people enough credit that like everyone loves rich storyline and characters with depth, but I am surprised that so many people got into it. I guess
Right.
so many people, I feel like close themselves off to like fantasy in particular.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, to me, that's where the most rich commentary on shit is sci-fi and fantasy, and that's my shit. I'm a total geek for that stuff, and I'm always looking at everything through that lens. Where like, this is a story about this, but what's it really about?
Mhm.
And to me, if I can't figure out, like, not if I can't figure it out, but if I like see that there is nothing that it's really about and it's just a spectacle, I can't get into it no matter how good it is. But if it's a mediocre movie but it has that aspect to it, to me it like ends up more favorable in my opinion. I don't know. That's the kind of shit that I'm into, and I want to see people actually like thinking about what they're doing and not just trying to create a series of cool events strung together that look good on camera.
Mhm.
But like, what are you trying to say? Why are you making this?
I feel like
Like,
that's how I pursue my craft. I I think that what really defines good not just good music but good art is a level of honesty. It has to be genuine and authentic. So I really try to go in to the rehearsal space, and when I work on music, I try not to do anything but really put myself down on the audio interface or whatever canvas,
Yeah.
like musical canvas. I because I think whether or not people know it, whether or not people know that they can tell when something is really genuine. I think people have that sense. You can kind of just turn the radio on and hear when someone actually cares about what they're doing.
Sometimes. I mean, I don't turn on the radio all that much, to be quite
Yeah,
honest. And when
I'm
I
kind of
do,
stuck on NPR, to be honest.
I ain't really hearing anything that's got any kind of soul. But substitute internet for radio, then yeah, that's totally true.
Internet radio.
Yeah. Or just, some shit on YouTube or SoundCloud or whatever. Like, you'll encounter the most random people making the most sincere music.
Mhm.
And today there was something that totally fucking boggled my mind. This artist from St. Paul, Minnesota, he's 15 or 16 years old, white kid. His name is Spooky Black. Like, the whitest fucking kid you'll ever see. Like, wearing a turtleneck, white turtleneck, with like a gold chain, like, on the outside of the turtleneck, and a, like, do-rag on. He looks fucking ridiculous. But he's making this sort of, like, very drowsy, kind of, sort of like trap music, like the hip hop sense of trap music, and like this very, like your sipping on some lean, where everything is kind of like slowed down and like really morphed sounding, and he's just singing over it. Like, he has a great voice, kind of sounds like, you know, a little bit James Blakey. And through all the ridiculousness of seeing this fucking kid in a turtleneck and a gold chain and a do-rag in Minnesota, like looking like the biggest fucking poser you'll ever see, making this genuine music that you can tell is like, this kid is doing what he's passionate about, and I'm kind of digging it, even though it's like, I shouldn't dig it, you know? Like, there's something about it that is turning you off, but at the same time you're intrigued because, like, how am I still liking this, and this thing is turning me off? And to me, that's something like, when I analyze myself and the kind of shit that I'm into, one of the common things that is running through everything is that aspect, where like there's something really weird and off-putting about it, and that's the most endearing part. Like, I don't listen to a lot of music with vocals, but almost all the music where there's a singer that I listen to, the singer's voice is weird. Like Rush or Coheed and Cambria, where the singer is like really high-pitched, and a lot of people can't get past that to like see what's underneath it. Or one of my favorite bands from the 90s, Hum. Have you ever heard Hum? Again, weird singer. He kind of has like a deep Kermit the Frog voice, but I fucking love it. Cocteau Twins, crazy sounding singer, like really weird voice. And I think pretty much all of these bands, when I first heard them, I was not really feeling it. Like, that thing was sort of like all I heard. And then there was like a moment where it kind of clicked and I got what they were doing. And since then, like I never looked back. And when I listen to Coheed and Cambria, I don't hear a guy with a high-pitched like voice. Or like I don't hear a band that's sort of vaguely referencing like, you know, hardcore music that is not really my thing. Like, I now see past that stuff and see through it, and I'm able to like really understand what they're trying to communicate. And to me, that ends up being the most interesting stuff to me, and that stays the longest with me. I don't know. I mean, it's weird when you start to think about your own habits like that and try and understand why you gravitate to that. Like, and I know that I'm the kind of person that wants to root for the underdog. Like, I hear someone with a fucked up voice and like, I want him to, you know, I want him to succeed deep down. Like, you know, fuck that. You got a crazy voice, but like, you know, if you're doing your thing and, you know, you own it, then I want you to, you know, I want you to do it to the fullest. But like, when you analyze yourself, if you analyze yourself in this way, like, what are you, like, what are the characteristics that start to define you as a person? Like, you're gravitating towards these things, you sympathize with these certain, you know, abstract concepts. Going deep here.
That's going really
psychological.
Deep. Probably bad habits. But when I really analyze myself, I just think bad habits.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, aside from
constant masturbation.
Constant masturbation. Going back to the if you could suck your own dick thing, I'd be at home. Yeah, just when I'm. Let's not go down that. I mean, I guess issues aside, when I analyze like how I play music, I'm mostly self-taught, with the exception of like a few lessons when I was really young. But I hated music lessons, so I still I think the best way to learn how to play an instrument is to listen to a song and try to play it, and you keep trying to play it until you play it right. Sort of a no mercy when I'm teaching people how to play something.
Yeah.
But you build bad habits when you do that, and sometimes those bad habits translate over to like your style of playing. And so sometimes I'll write things that that other people can't play because they don't. It's not because it's terribly difficult. It's
Right.
because I have this like really weird way of flicking my hand, and
Yeah.
that and
It's not the right way.
yeah,
quote unquote,
it's
yeah.
wrong. It's actually, it sounds terrible, but it works and with what I'm doing. And otherwise, I guess a lot of what I write about, and I guess what I identify with is just, I mean, in the past it was, you know, figuring out who you are, what your place is, like just in the universe. I guess I don't know. I think a lot about space and time, and just what it means to be anything at all. You know, you start to think about who am I, but then what is I? Like, what is?
Yeah.
You get down this rabbit hole of like.
No, I mean, it's the ultimate question.
Yeah,
And I think like one of the interesting things is that you've also separately than music, you also have gone into the world of science
yeah.
as a profession. And, you know, based on what you're saying, there's like there's a really strong connection between those two things, and they're both essentially different ways to start to ask and ultimately hope to answer the question of like, who are we? What are we doing here? What does this all mean? Why does any of this matter? What's at the root of it all? And to me, they kind of go hand in hand, but like for you, did they go hand in hand, or were they sort of competing things in your life when you made the decision that you were going to go into the field of physics? Was it sort of, did you see it as something similar to music, or did you see it as like, I'm making, going down one path?
I kind of just didn't want to study music in school,
Huh.
and I thought it would be a better idea to. I've always been the kind of person who is not afraid to read a book to teach myself something, and I thought the hardest thing for me to teach myself would be science, so that's what I wanted to go to school for, because I really didn't think that I could get a solid education in physics or in chemistry or like whatever science I would want it to go towards if I just read an organic chemistry textbook. Like I don't think it really works like that, and I wanted hands-on experience. So I always, and also I pipe dreams of I want my name to be in a physics textbook, and I want to help the energy crisis, and I want to be like part of that.
Yeah.
And there was always the idea of I would do both, and life doesn't work out like that, and you kind of unfortunately you have to specialize, and you have to either quit your day job or quit the other thing.
So do you try and keep them separate, like, or do you find ways to like sort of meld those two worlds?
They definitely can be melded. Unfortunately, I haven't really gotten to a point where I can meld them. When I used to teach, it was really easy to talk about waves and talk about springs and mainly just waves, actually, using music as an example.
Right.
You can talk about nodes like on guitar string and things like that, and that is a nice translation. But other than that, actually, I can't really think of. I mean, I'm not in the field of acoustics, but that would be really cool.
Now, there's something really interesting about the science of sound and the effect that sound can have on reality and matter. And it's something that a lot of people, we have music all around us, noise all around us, TVs, radios, on the streets. We have all this sound going on, and we kind of tune it out when it's not relevant to us. And we just sort of think of it only in terms of our ears. And we don't often consider that these are actual like waves, long or short waves, that could be having an effect on our makeup, like very long waveforms actually like can fuck shit up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can be used as a weapon even. And that's something that is really interesting when you consider making music as a sort of scientific process of using the elements of physics to create a response in someone. So rather than like thinking of it like, oh, I'm playing certain notes and like people are hearing them and it's, they're liking it or not liking it, you're like pointing a weapon at them and you are like using the makeup of that weapon and the different kinds of waves that it's emitting to like literally change something about them and affect them in a way that they're not aware of. Some fucking deep shit,
Yeah, actually, I guess if I were to really take a physics approach to music, one thing I would really like to do is sort of scientifically try to figure out how to make music that would most certainly make you feel a certain way. Like, have you ever, what is it, ASMR?
Yeah,
those videos?
I've heard some people that have been more into it lately. Like one of my Facebook friends is like posting videos on it, and I haven't taken the time to watch.
I'll be honest, I've watched a few of them, and a lot of them are just really boring videos of people talking or showing their bags or whatever. But there's some sounds that people make, usually like soft whispering in certain frequencies or like weird like mouth like weird, I don't know, weird things that
it's weird.
Definitely like give you a weird tingle in your some part
No,
of your
it
brain.
is weird, the sound that you just made. Like it's one of the can be one of the most revolting sounds. Like a friend and I were talking about this a few days ago. Like one of the most disgusting sounds is mayonnaise being stirred.
Oh, I can hear it.
Fucking gross.
It is
like,
gross, yeah.
I love mayonnaise. I'm not one of those mayonnaise haters.
I'm a mayonnaise hater.
Fuck you, Don. This podcast is over. No.
Flip over the table. It's done.
I like mayonnaise, but the sound of mayonnaise is fucking disgusting. I don't know what it is. It's exactly that.
You can hear it, right? As I'm doing just this.
It's fucking gross.
Yeah, it is.
And it's like it's sound that like affects you, like cardboard rubbing together or styrofoam or like these sounds
like
that have this like this effect on you. And I don't know if you've heard about we always kind of got to delve a little into conspiracy world here.
I love conspiracy theories.
Have you heard about the Hum?
The Hum?
Yeah, it's like
maybe I
this sort of worldwide phenomenon in certain areas. One of the most prevalent in terms of like media coverage is the Windsor Hum in Windsor, Ontario, and Detroit, Michigan. And people that live in this area, they are driven crazy by this really low rattling hum that will not go, like it comes and goes, but when it's there, you can't drown it out. You cover your ears and you hear it inside your head. It's like people have committed suicide because like it fucking drives them crazy. And I think in this particular instance, the theory that, is not 100% proven, but the theory is that it is created by this underground blast furnace at a refinery that is on an island right outside of Detroit that runs, certain hours of the day and creates this like really low vibrating resonance that like carries through the area.
Whoa.
That's that's what they've theorized that it's the cause, but nobody really knows. There's other places in the world where this happens and there's nothing like that you can explain it. Like it doesn't always happen near a refinery or something like that. But yeah, it's like really extremely low frequencies.
Has anyone recorded it?
You can't record it. Like it's so low frequency that
you can't
it becomes
hear it, but you can feel it?
Yeah, you can't. If you record it with the regular audio equipment, I'm sure if you got high quality sound equipment, you could, but it's not like clockwork where you show up at like 10:30 and on the dot it starts playing. Of course everyone experiences where like you know, as soon as you're not looking for your keys, you find them, but when you're looking for it, you can't fucking find the damn things. Same shit, where like when you get the money together to have a whole crew go out and like record this with very high sensitivity equipment, the shit doesn't happen. So, but yeah, I mean, it happens in New Zealand, it happens in the UK, I think places in another place in Denmark, and Windsor. It's very weird. But like, we don't know where this comes from. It could be like some kind of something from the earth. It could be something, a byproduct of some kind of technology that we use. Nobody really knows. The conspiracy theory is that it's, you know, mind control, or, you know,
like DARPA.
Something like that. Like,
it's X-Files. There's some X-Files stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, I can't make the conclusion that there's anything nefarious to it, but it's a very interesting concept that like there's this potentially natural, potentially byproduct of, you know, our industrialized world that is having this crazy effect on people to the point where it drives them crazy. Like, and it's just sound. And the idea of like, you know, well, could somebody use sound to intentionally, you know, manipulate people? I mean, I think the obvious answer is yeah, for sure they could. So if you can, you know, I'm going to go ahead and guess that people are. That's just my opinion, you know. I have the feeling that anything that can be done and you can gain something from it, somebody's fucking doing it. Like somebody's using it to make money or whatever. So I don't know, it makes, and we know noise and sound weapons are definitely in use by the military. We haven't had anything documented using extremely low frequency weapons though. That's, you know, that's an interesting area. The brown note.
The brown note. I wonder if that actually exists.
I don't know. For those of you who don't know what the brown note is, you might want to just Google that real quick.
It makes you poop.
It's a sound that makes you poop.
It'll come in handy. You're constipated. Just play the brown note. Right there on the flute.
But yeah, I mean, we know that the military uses sound as a weapon. There are weapons that have been developed where you aim usually a high frequency sound at a person and it like stops them in their tracks. They can't think. It disrupts their thought processes. They have to stop what they're doing and like grab their ears, you know, it disorients people. And it's usually used as like a dispersal method. And sound can travel a very far distance. So this is like what they use on pirates, basically. Like, they put it on boats, they aim it at your boat, and even if they're like, you know, a mile away, they can direct this sound at you and it'll fuck you up, and they can come and board your ship and, you know, take you out. Very interesting stuff. How into like these weird aspects of physics and the natural world around us do you get? Because I get fucking pretty deep, obviously.
I love fringe science. I think that too many people are worried about ruining their careers, and that's really put a halt on some really fantastic science. There's this whole field of what, like, quote unquote black physics that no one wants to touch because it could potentially destroy your career if you're wrong. Yeah.
I think people don't really know that this is a factor in the scientific world, that like people are afraid to attach themselves to certain kooky ideas, even if they may be true, because of this sort of like fear of being ridiculed or being lumped in as like a pseudoscience like type person. And I see people like Michio Kaku and Neil deGrasse Tyson, like, you know, these are the new Carl Sagan type guys who are like the face of science right now. They're really fucking smart. These guys are really fucking smart. But they themselves don't even realize, like, the unscientific way that they approach and view these weird things.
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
they'll talk shit about something that they've never even bothered to look into, and they will feel like they're coming from a place of authority in discrediting that or debunking, which I fucking hate.
Yeah. I love Neil deGrasse Tyson, but I have a really strong disliking for Michio Kaku, and I won't get too into that because, that guy drives me nuts with exactly what you're talking about. A lot of the times, I feel like he explains something in layman's terms, but ends up saying it completely wrong, or he just makes it sound like it's something totally different, and
or it doesn't answer the question at all.
Yeah, or he just talks about something that is somewhere like hundreds of years down the line to make people really stoked about science instead of just, I don't know, people should be stoked about what really is. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening today. You know, graphene, photonic crystals, a lot of fantastic things, especially in computing. But talking about, but there's plenty of people even today who are considered great minds who are laughed out of their field. Like Boltzmann is considered the father of like thermodynamics and information theory, and he ended up killing himself because he was ostracized for his how he pictured particles, and when he would publish journals, they would make him change his wording so that way it fit the norm.
Right.
And his equation for entropy is correct, and there's plenty of examples of what is currently today like very common knowledge that was at one point in time fringe, or just wrong.
Yeah, and that's something that we have to really consider when we're walking through this world with the understanding that we are sort of mastering reality. We tend to overlook all these things that are like inconvenient for that construct of reality that we think we understand. And as much as people don't want to believe it, scientists are just as susceptible to that as anybody. There are people whose careers are put at risk by new ideas, that, if you've been teaching something for 30 years and somebody comes along and basically proves that what you've been teaching is bullshit, you're not going to be like gung-ho to accept that. Like, it's going to fuck you up to have that be commonly accepted. And I'm really into alternate theories of the ancient world is like one of my that's my shit. And there are people who, like Professor Robert Schoch, who is I can't remember what university he's from, maybe Columbia or something like that, tenured professor at a very prestigious university in the field of, what do you call it, geology, maybe? I don't know if that's the specific field he's in, but, looking at the land and being able to determine how things happen, like looking at stratations and stuff like that. And he had always had these kind of like interests in alternative history and stuff like that, but he couldn't talk about it until he became a tenured professor. And he was like, okay, I got my shit secure. Now I can start going into this shit. And as soon as he got that, he started, one of the first things and one of the things that made him really famous is he teamed up with this guy, John Anthony West, who's not technically an Egyptologist, but a scholar of Egypt. And he, through reading some, older Egyptologists' writings, read an offhand remark that this person made that said, and of course the Sphinx enclosure shows a millennia of water erosion, like, along the sides. And he, read that and he's like, holy shit. That's something that you can bring a scientist in and prove, is this right? Is this actually water erosion? Or, because there hasn't been water in in Giza or the Nile Plateau for thousands of years to be able to explain, why there is very clear rainwater erosion coming down the side of the Sphinx enclosure. And even though it's unanimously agreed within the world of geology, yeah, this dude's right. This is very clearly water erosion. This is not wind erosion. It looks very different. And how do you explain this? This can only be caused by thousands of years of exposure to rainwater draining down the sides of this enclosure. If the conventional dating is to be believed, that's impossible. There was no period of rainfall that would have created that within the time frame that it's supposed to have been built. But Egyptologists, who are not geologists, they're not scientists at all, will not accept it. They won't accept that this is as old as they say it has to be to make this geology make sense, because their careers are based on a completely different paradigm that would be shattered by the fact that the Sphinx is, 12,000 years old instead of 3,000 years old or something. A huge difference in time.
Mm-hmm.
And this happens all the time. I mean, in all aspects of science, is that there's this clash between people who have a vested interest in keeping the current paradigm and people who want to actually explore and try and figure shit out and follow the facts and see what it actually says. That kind of shit is fascinating to me, though. But this other realm of science that we're just starting to understand, of quantum physics and the nature of the quantum universe, to me is also really interesting. And there's some evidence, if you believe the symbolist analysis of Egyptian culture, that the ancient Egyptians, the theory is that it was passed on to them, that they knew about this stuff, that they encoded this information into their buildings, into their artwork, as a way to preserve it. Really interesting shit that we're just now starting to understand, and that actually, I don't know, we're going to get a little crazy here, so if you are not into this, then,
keep
whatever.
Going.
But
I want to hear.
To me, a lot of the stuff that we're learning about quantum physics really opens up, all these things that were considered crazy and impossible by people like Carl Sagan, who, was a huge influence on me. I can't diss Carl Sagan at all. He's a fucking monster. But in a lot of ways, he was very narrow-minded in terms of, and it was necessary for the time, to sort of be anti-superstition and anti-anything that you couldn't explain in the material world. But now we're realizing that the material world is not what we thought it was. And it's possible for two things that aren't connected in any way that we can understand at this point, separated by vast distances, can be in communication with each other. We have no idea how they're doing it. But it's there. You can prove it. You can demonstrate that non-locality is a thing. But, and to me this opens up well, if non-locality is a thing, then why couldn't something like reincarnation be real? You know, these are methods that we're just now learning about that, you know, show us how these things could actually practically happen in science, in a scientific way. Any thoughts on that?
I really hope that reincarnation is real, because I'm going to be honest, I, as someone who has to kind of subscribe to the idea that once you're dead, I really like the idea of being reincarnated. Especially since I think one of the greatest tragedies of life is that there isn't enough time to do everything. There isn't enough time to learn everything. I would like not necessarily more time as me. I don't need more time as me.
Right.
But I'd like more time on this planet. It's kind of cool here. And I'm all for exploring space, but Earth is far more interesting than Mars. At least as far as doing things on it goes for now. But then you get into what does it mean? What does it really mean to be reincarnated? Like, what is the spirit?
Yeah.
What is I? Does having a functioning body and brain necessarily mean you've been reincarnated, or is there something more? You know, is it what is the spirit?
Yeah.
Are you?
Well, where does it come from? Because the scientific view currently in our current paradigm would be that consciousness is created by the brain.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we don't have any way to prove that. But that's the current theory that we're working under, is that because if you take away certain functions of the brain, it has an effect on your consciousness, then the brain must be the source of the consciousness. To me, that's a little bit, you know, simplistic.
Mm-hmm.
It's a leap. And one thing that I think scientists really should consider is that a lot of what they believe is a leap of faith, and that you're not going out and doing every single experiment yourself. You're trusting that somebody else did it and they did it right, and it was, you know, that they're telling the truth, and that this is, you know, okay, now I can build something off of that. But when you really get down to it, a lot of it is belief, and a lot of it is faith.
Mm-hmm.
Faith on multiple levels. Faith in our ability to comprehend these things. Faith that what we are able to measure is the extent of what's there, and that we have the capacity to even understand these things, you know? That's a leap of faith. And it's not proven at all. So there's a certain, to me, like sense of superiority in a way with a lot of people who subscribe to like this rigidly material scientific paradigm that sort of, you know, doesn't take into account all these other things that are actually, you know, perhaps not measurable in a material sense, but are there. You know, you can't measure, at least we don't know how to measure currently what creates like that quantum entanglement. We don't know. We can't see that. So why are we assuming that like we have the capacity to like observe something multiple times and think we've got it, when there may be other things going on that we're not even seeing and not factoring in that are also having an effect on it?
There's so much more out there than that you just can't see. And as much as I think that, you know, I probably am just a collection of signals going off from my brain, and I really am probably just this machine that's working, but I definitely feel like a soul in a body and not a body with a soul, you know. But maybe that's just how I'm wired. Maybe
Yeah,
that's how we're
yeah.
all wired to feel that way. Maybe I don't know. It's
Or maybe consciousness exists somewhere else, and the brain is a conduit
this is
rather than
something
the generator.
something that bothers me a lot, and I have been writing a lot of stuff about this lately. Just the when the body and the mind are in harmony or in discord, and that there's this feeling of just being outside of time.
Yeah.
And time and consciousness are two things that I get wrapped up in a lot. And like, have you ever like been walking into work or doing something that is something that you do every day, so you're basically on muscle memory. It's almost like flushing the toilet. Like
Yeah.
you've kind of, your body just does it, and you'll be walking down the street, you walk into work, and if you ever just realize that you don't really remember walking from like that
Right.
the 5 steps, because your body is just sort of going through the motions. And sometimes I'll try to think about it. It's almost like trying to remember where you were while you were asleep, like trying to remember that time span. And like, my body was there, but where was I?
Yeah.
And that's when I start to wonder, what does I even mean?
Yeah.
Because I get that, you know, everything in the universe is, or everything that we can see in the universe is made up of like the same little building blocks, right? And everything's made up of compounds and elements, and then you get down deeper to atoms and protons and neutrons and electrons, and then even deeper, and then all the protons and neutrons are made up of even smaller things, quarks. And generally speaking, everything's made up of like these two quarks, the up and the bottom, top and the bottom, no, up and down. And so everything is just made up of these, like, basically these little Lego pieces, these little tiny building blocks and everything. And like, the only difference between you and I is that our pieces are put together just a little bit differently, but it's the same pieces, you know?
Yeah.
So then really what's the difference? Why is it that I'm not why do I get to experience? So then when you really think about it, you're really just this tiny, if everything is made of the same pieces, then we're just tiny conscious pieces of the universe. And so when you really look up into the stars, you're kind of looking back at yourself in a way, and you're this lucky piece of the universe that gets to observe itself.
Yeah. I mean, there's an interesting concept that consciousness is the universe's method of self-reflection. Basically, like, it's a byproduct of the universe wanting to be able to, you know, observe itself, you know, which is an interesting idea. But what do you think about the idea that it's kind of gaining a lot more steam these days, of the idea of like a holographic universe, that that there are certain things about the nature of reality that don't quite gel with, and we don't have a theory of everything, obviously, but with our current scientific models, there are certain things that we don't really factor in a way, like I don't know what the term is, but that observing something changes it, you know? And there have been experiments where it's, you know, been somewhat demonstrated that the human mind can have an effect on random number generation. And there's this sort of like, there's a few ways to explain how this might be possible. One of them being that what we're living in is sort of like, if you were to imagine like an open world video game where a designer has programmed everything is there, but due to the limitations of computation, what's being rendered is what is necessary to be rendered at that time. So if you're not looking at something, it's not being rendered. When you look at it, it starts to render. It's like when you're playing GTA or something and you can see way off in the distance that there's a mountain range, and you can go to that mountain range, but until you go there, it's like just sort of like a loose abstract rendering of that mountain range. And it's not rendering every single particle of dirt that's on it, every bush, etc. But when you get up close, it starts to render that stuff. What do you think about this concept? Like, does it make sense to you? Is there, or do you think that there's another answer to it?
Those concepts are heavy. Those are things that I don't think anyone will ever know. And
You think so?
I don't think anyone will know it within my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I get it, and frankly, it doesn't seem crazy to me. I think there are other theories that are far more crazy.
Like, what do you think?
Or just as
What to you is a crazy theory?
crazy theory?
Yeah, that could be true, but crazy.
Just pretty much most religions. Like, frankly, like,
That's true.
Honestly, when it comes to, I was born and raised like Catholic and Christian. Like, all those stories to me are just like the same level of absurd as, a holographic universe. It's all just, I don't know, like it's all absurd until even what's true, I'm sure, is absurd.
Yeah.
And I understand a lot of it mathematically, collapsing wave functions and things like that. I took plenty of quantum mechanics classes, so like as a mathematical constructs, I understand it. But it's something that the more you think you understand it, the more you really don't. I think it makes a lot of sense, though, the rendering thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's some things that we just, how else do you explain things like that? Like that. I mean, what is it called? That the act of observing something changes it. What is that?
There's collapsing the wave function. There's it's typically just called the observer problem, I think.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like you put you have a box and you throw a particle in it or electron, let's spin up or spin down. It's going to be in one of those states, and then you can take we have like a pair where like one spin up and one spin down, and then you pull them infinitely far away, and there's a probability that one is up and one is down, and until you open the box and see which one it is, then
right.
you collapse the wave function. You know what the other one's going to be.
But we have no way of knowing whether the up and down has been determined before you open the box or when you open the box. Like, when necessity dictates that it needs to be something, then it becomes something. Which is really a crazy way to think about the universe. And then you start to think, well, like, what makes all this shit around us? Like, and there are some things that still, to me, never really quite make sense. Like the idea that, like color, and being an art school student, we had to learn a lot about color and how color works. And I still don't fucking get it. Like, I get that, like, the perception of color is the refraction or absorption of different, spectrums of light, and what gets reflected back at us is what we perceive the color as. But, is there an inherent color to things? That's what dictates what, how that gets assigned. I mean, these are crazy things when you really think about it, like the simple things of reality that are just so, well, how does this work? Like, what is making this black and what is making this red? And if it's all just like essentially the same shit is like coming at it, and what gets bounced back is what and absorbed is creating the difference, that's some really like hard shit to wrap your head around, you know? And like this is every aspect of our reality is this crazy. Like that we're made up of shit that's not connected, but we're solid. Like by all accounts, you should be able to put your fucking hand through someone's body because none of this shit is connected. Like,
Yeah.
you know, when you really get down to it and look at it on a small enough scale, it's all just stuff that's floating next to each other, and like there's not a string tying it together. How does it stay together? Like, what makes it solid? Like, it's really crazy shit. But I mean, are these the kind of things that got you interested in physics, or were you approaching it from more of like a traditional, I want to be a scientist and I want to, invent stuff? Or were you like, did you start with pondering the mysteries and, finding this as a way to sort of attempt to answer them?
I mean, it was definitely a little bit of wanting to be a scientist, but mainly it was just I thought that physics was the best way that I could understand the universe, and the better I could understand the universe would be the better I could understand myself. And the world around me is I want to know how it works, and I want to not feel so lost in the dark. There's some things that are really easy to do and they look really difficult. I don't know, you go to a coffee shop and you see someone pull an espresso shot and it looks like magic. And I'm not knocking at baristas or anything, but like when you learn how to do it, suddenly you understand what they're doing. They understand what goes into it. It's just like anything. I want that process of learning, and something that was completely foreign to you is now very simple, or at least maybe not simple, but something that you understand, not some behind a veil or something.
So
that is what I love.
Do you think we have the capacity to ultimately understand the universe?
No.
Not
the entire universe. I don't think so.
So is there, taking that into consideration, does that fact sort of like disqualify the whole, process? Like if ultimately you feel that we're never going to understand this stuff, there's things that it's not possible, at least in our current evolutionary state, to comprehend all these things. Obviously there's a benefit to scientific research, practical benefits, we learn how to do all kinds of shit. Clean water so that we can drink it and not get, explosive diarrhea. Making plastics out of plant secretions, shit like that is
Teflon.
Yeah, it's cool. There's a practical use for it, but like in the grand sense of like understanding the mechanics of the universe, is there a point to it if you know that ultimately you're just going to be like always be shy of like the real answer?
But let me answer your question with another question.
Okay.
Do you think that regardless of whether or not there's a point to it, do you think there's a point to it if you could?
Well, I mean, the point would be ego-driven, obviously, like that, yes, we finally did it. We got it. It's in the bag. We understand it. Now we can move on to something else. What else there is, I guess, is, the other question. But
what do you do when you know everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's...
All right, we're going to sit here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, maybe that's the ultimate answer to the whole thing, is that God is the one who figured it all out, and like can now sit back and just do whatever the fuck, you know, whatever moves it, him, her, whatever, if you believe in anything. I don't know. And that's something else that, you know, is another aspect of the scientific paradigm, is the concept that, well, maybe there is a God, and maybe it's not the God that religion, you know, talks about. But in a lot of respects, there has to be an origin, you know? And a lot of the current scientific paradigm has invested a lot of energy into like trying to prove that all these things could have happened like without anybody doing anything. It could just happen all on its own. I don't know if I totally buy that. Like, I'm not a religious person at all. I don't subscribe to any religion. But I understand that we don't know. And contrary to what a lot of scientists assert, there are things that do point in that direction, you know? Obviously, if the universe really is a giant equation, you know, who put together that equation? If it's a giant, like, computer program, who designed it? You know, did it just happen by happenstance that all these things coalesced into creating that? What created those things in the first place? Where did they come from? Where did the gases from the Big Bang that, you know, supposedly started as, you know, the tiniest of the tiny and exploded into everything that we know, you know, where did that come from? Like, ultimately, it's like, I feel like in a lot of respects, scientists that sort of perpetuate this are themselves taking part in what they're arguing against, in a way, which is starting with the conclusion that you want to arrive at and then making the pieces fit. Because you want to, like, be able to demonstrate that God is not necessary for any of this stuff to happen. I mean, that's really was the motivating factor for a lot of this research. So you start to construct, well, how could this have happened if, you know, there was no one there to do it? And the theory of the Big Bang sort of comes out of this effort to prove something you've already determined, that there is no God, or God is not necessary for this equation. But then you're sort of, you know, you're conveniently leaving out the things that would point to the thing that discredits your theory in the first place. I don't know.
Do you think there needs to be a start?
I think, well, that's something we'll definitely never know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's, to me, like the whole theory of the Big Bang, it just doesn't ring true to me as a whole. Like, and obviously I'm not like a mathematician, I'm not a physicist, I haven't gone through and like, oh, well, yeah, the equation says it's true. But to me, they're like, you can't have something from nothing. It's just not, you know, there has to be something there to create something. And this is sort of like a universal law of science in every respect except for like how it started. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, it's not consistent with what, you know, with everything else that's being said. Like in, you know, there's a tenet of, you know, the law of thermodynamics is that energy is not ever lost. It just is changed and becomes something else. So if it's not lost, then like where did it ever come from? Like all that shit had to be there. So to me, that's the thing that is not answered. Like you're starting with all the pieces there, and you're not really explaining how all those pieces were there in the first place. I don't know. And maybe I'm just not smart enough to get it. I'm willing to admit that, but
anybody is. I think until we've evolved to have a few more folds in our brain and we can perceive what four-dimensional or just extra-dimensional shapes would look like, I don't think this is something that anyone will have any hope of even understanding.
But I mean, what I was asking was sort of like a rhetorical question in a way. Like, obviously there's a point to it because you gain understanding along the way.
Definitely.
That helps you out in
People
your
need
journey.
something to do.
We need shit to do. We need ways to make things easier. And science and the scientific method definitely helps with that. But ultimately, science only deals with the material world. And to me, there's so much growing evidence that the material world is only a facet of the universe that to be like so invested in this paradigm the way people are seems disingenuous to me, you know?
I think for now it's only about the material world. I think eventually people will have to a lot of old farts will die off, and people will not be so afraid of losing their careers, and black science and fringe stuff will be touched on.
Well, I hope so, because that's some interesting shit.
It is, yeah.
What's your favorite like fringe thing to think about?
Fringe stuff? Oh man. There's what is it? Is it DARPA? The weather people who control the weather.
Oh, HARP.
HARP. Thank you. Yeah, HARP. Yeah.
High altitude atmospheric research.
Yeah, I think they're
project.
up in like Alaska, right?
Yeah.
And
although
there's another one.
It's closing down supposedly.
Supposedly, yeah, and they control the weather everywhere. And
yeah.
I think that
one.
Well,
supposedly what the conspiracy theorists say is that HARP, which is an installation that currently exists up in Alaska, that is essentially like a whole fucking like massive field of radio antennas that can be focused on a certain area of the ionosphere and shoot up I think high frequency radio transmissions to heat up the ionosphere. And the practical application of this, according to the people who don't think it's a conspiracy theory, is, well, this is a way to like be able to bounce transmissions off of the ionosphere to be able to communicate with a nuclear sub that's way under the ocean, halfway across the world, and you need to get a message to them. You bounce it off the ionosphere. Bada bing, you're good.
Super simple.
But, yeah. But a lot of people argue that the process of doing this has side effects. Like, you're sending these very high energy waves into the atmosphere that have an effect on the particles in the atmosphere. We don't know what it's doing to the ionosphere and what heating the ionosphere does to affect the weather or anything else. But yet people are all too ready to say, nothing to worry about here. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's cool. Nothing weird. We're just fucking around, guys.
Just making hurricanes.
It's
no big deal.
Just radio waves, man.
Just radio waves.
I mean, well, here's something that's really weird, and we'll kind of wrap this up because we're getting a little deep into it, but I've talked before on this podcast about Catherine Austin Fitts, who is, or was, the Assistant Secretary of Housing and Urban Development under Bush Sr. and Clinton. And long story short, she's a financial person. She got into some heat with the government based on a program that she wrote. They like put her in lawsuits for years and years, drained all her resources, you know, did all the shit that they do to fuck people's lives up. And so she basically, you know, went into private practice after this and was basically doing private financial consulting with people. And one of her clients, according to her, wanted to purchase a certain kind of bond that is like a government-issued bond in foreign countries. And this person was interested in Indonesian bearer bonds, or whatever they're called. And so she didn't know anything about this particular avenue of finance, so she had to do her research. So in researching it, she's like looking at all this shit, and it's starting to make sense to her. She thinks she's getting it, and then all of a sudden, she sees a massive sell-off that totally is not normal based on what she's seen in the past, what she's been checking out. And then a few days later, the huge Indonesian tsunami happened that killed so many people and was a huge disaster. And so she's like looking at the evidence, and she's like, the only conclusion that I can draw from this is that they knew this was going to happen. Whether it's because they made it happen or they just have a way to, you know, predict these things that is not publicly available. Who knows? But it doesn't make sense for all this shit to be sold off in one very short time span, pretty much directly before a huge natural disaster fucks some shit up. It's very, very odd when you start to think about it. And a lot of people argue that with things like HARP and a lot of these black projects that you mentioned, DARPA, which is the defense world's, like, you know, secret, not so secret, but like it's one of their more public defense research projects. And they've done like shit with self-driving cars and like robots and stuff like that. But that, you know, a lot of this research has given a small segment of people access to information and programs and technology that allow them to do things that the average person don't believe is possible, like control the weather or predict the weather in a way that is deeper than the average, like, you know, weather person. What I don't remember what they call a weather person, but cometologist or something like that. But so it's either that they can control the weather using something like HARP and cause these things to happen for whatever reason, or they have a way to predict it so that they can, you know, act accordingly and not have their interests compromised by natural disasters. I don't know. To me, I like to think about things like crazy things in a very logical way. Like, what would motivate someone? And to me, if your job is to like make sure you can control as many things as you can control in order to keep a situation the way you want it to be, like the military and the government it's their job to do, you're going to want to like go down certain routes. There's certain things that are very like, okay, well, you want to be able to know what's going on all over the place, like very easily. That's like a very core necessity in being able to police and plan and strategize and prevent things and whatever. So it would make sense to institute ways that you would be able to use surveillance to find out what's going on anywhere in the world at any given time. That makes sense to me. Like, why would you not want to do that? It's in your best interest to do that. And we all know that, like, technology is... The technology that is consumer available is historically, like, 30 to 40 years behind these black budget research projects. Common example would be like the internet. You know, we didn't get the internet till the mid-90s. The military had the internet for a long fucking time before that. Obviously it wasn't what it is today, but they had that technology to network computers and communicate across vast distances. Thinking like 60s, 70s, you know, long time. So it's plausible that this technology could be real. And there could be a way to influence the weather, or at least be able to predict when certain things are going to happen. When an earthquake's going to happen, shit like that. To me, it makes sense that you would want to cover your bases and, like, you know, well, fuck, I need to make sure that I can, you know, do what I need to do and control all the aspects that are going to allow me to do that. And these are some inherent things that are going to be roadblocks that I need to overcome. Let me figure out, like, how I can not have my shit fucked up by a giant tsunami. So, to me, it sounds crazy, but there's a very rational, like, method behind why that would be a reality, why people would look into it. And if you have an infinite amount of money, like a lot of these places do, especially when you're dealing with, like, black budget stuff where, you know, you're not even, you know, there's black budget projects where their accounting, like, they have to account for it to the public. Excuse me. And they'll just, like, you know, strike it from the record so you can't, you know, see what it is, but they have to put a line item there to account for where that money's going. And then there's black budget where it's all off the books. They're selling drugs, they're selling weapons, whatever it is, to fund these operations, and we have no idea how much money that, you know, that world is generating. And if you have infinite resources like that, and you can court the top scientific minds to, like, focus on this shit, I can't even fathom the amount of crazy shit that you can accomplish. So to me, a lot of this stuff is, like, not that unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the actual truth of it? I can't say. But is it possible? Fuck yeah.
Yeah, definitely. If you talk to some older scientists, they all have stories about some pretty heavy shit. Like my old boss would love to talk about just parties that she'd go to where physicists would get too drunk and start complaining about the stuff that, you know, if they worked for the government, the stuff that the government wouldn't tell people about, and people would get dragged out of the room as they're yelling about warp drive and things like that.
Well, this will be my last question because we're almost at 2 hours now. What is the craziest thing that you think actually exists?
The craziest thing that actually exists?
Yeah, like warp drive, time machine, teleportation, you know, shit like that. Like, what's the craziest thing that you think actually exists technologically?
Oh, man. I probably... I wouldn't... Okay, how about, like, aliens? Is that like the contact between aliens and like the president?
That counts.
As far, I mean, warp drive probably. Like, I'm sure warp drive exists.
Oh yeah.
Well,
that's crazy. I mean,
it's gotta.
For people that don't understand how a warp drive works in the Star Trek world, I mean, this is a crazy concept. So I'm interested to see how this would actually work.
Or whatever is
a faster than light.
Yeah,
travel is what you're talking about.
Some kind of. Alright.
Because with the warp drive, you're not actually moving.
Yeah, you're just sitting there.
The world, like the universe around you, is bending and moving, which is fucking crazy. Like, maybe it's possible, but that seems really dicey to me. Like, you want a way to fuck shit up, like, with just one action? That seems like how you would fucking do it. Like, warping space and time around you in order to travel seems like the most self-centered, like, egotistical, like, thing you could possibly think of. Like, everything around me just exists for me to manipulate to get where I need to go. Anyway.
It's probably...
So you think faster than light travel exists?
It's hard for me to say what I really believe, because like I have hunches.
Okay.
Hunches of things, but then when I say it out loud, I think, man, no, Phil, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Well, it is crazy, but crazy shit happens all the time.
That's true. I believe in aliens for sure.
Like contact with aliens.
Yeah, and alien technology and.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of shit that sort of points at that. It's hard to tell whether it's like serving a purpose, like as a cover, a convenient cover for things, or whether it's actually true. Because there are so many people out there like that are whistleblowers for aliens. Like over 10 people that have like worked for the government or some kind of government contractor that have come out on the record and said, this shit's real. I saw it. I dealt with it. So, is it possible? Fuck yeah, I think so.
I think it's definitely possible.
Anyway,
I believe.
We're going to wrap this up because we've been podcasting like a motherfucker for 2 hours over here.
Oh, so much Phil.
Yeah.
You've been filled with so much Phil.
So now, hopefully you know a little bit more about one of our on-again, off-again co-hosts, Mr. Philip Cala, also known as Future Shapes. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Between You, Me, and Jose. We had a really awesome time pontificating about the craziness of the world. And hopefully you'll come back and check us out next week. Next episode, we will be sitting down with a great local band that Phil has a connection to, the Y-Axis. So that's next Wednesday here on the Slims Presents blog or on iTunes if you're a subscriber. Definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. And like I said at the beginning of the show, like, comment, big up us because it'll help us reach a larger audience. And, we think there's some interesting stuff going on here. So help us reach a larger fan base. And thanks again to Phil for coming down.
Thanks for having me.
And it was interesting talking to you and talking about all the crazy shit that may or may not be true in the world.
I'm not even drunk.
So check us out next week, guys. Thanks a lot. Good night.
I guess it's weird. I mean, it still is weird to me if like some random like teen girls want to take a picture with me. I'm like, you want to take a picture with me? That's kind of weird. I think but
we don't even have like cut off jean jackets and like leather pants. Like if we did, then I'd be like, okay, I see this.
Oh yeah.
Nothing we do is really geared towards that. So that's what's so strange to me sometimes.
Right.
But I appreciate it, and I'm like, I'll gladly do whatever.
Get them while they're young,
Well,
formative years. Then they, you've molded their entire life.
I mean, I'm honestly just really blessed to be able to do music in the way that we've been able to do it. Like I feel really lucky, and people have said like really intense stuff to me, not bad intense, but like come up to me after a show and said, you know, when I was battling cancer in the hospital, I listened to your album on repeat. Like,
wow,
that's tough. Like that's tough to hear, because then you're like, oh no, like I'm so not worth that. You know, I'm not worthy enough that would be that thing for you. You know, and like, and that was just one person. I don't get that all the time. It's not like we've got like, you know, the Make-A-Wish Foundation is like saving people's lives with our music or anything. But like people have or said like, there's this one guy who came up to me. He's like, yeah, dude, I went through this terrible breakup and I listened to your first album a lot. And it was like kind of like the like soundtrack to my terrible breakup. And like I've said stuff like that to bands too.
Right,
so to sort of realize that even again, we're not big at all. We have a very small fan base, but even to those select people, like we're that band to them.
Well, it's not really about size, you know.
Yeah,
it's like,
totally.
You know,
well, I guess I'm just trying to say
like
we're not like famous, right? Like,
yeah, but you can still like speak to someone on a emotional level, and you know, just because you aren't out there making millions or performing in front of like, you know, Glastonbury-sized crowds, like doesn't mean that you can't evoke emotions in somebody, and that's the whole point. And I think that's something that people are kind of slowly coming to terms with you know, what I call the death of the music industry, like that it's not like that's not the only way, like just because that's the way it's been before, that this is what defines success, that, you know, that's not necessarily the case nowadays. You can have the same effect on an individual recording something in your bedroom on your computer and releasing it online, and it speaks to the person in the same way.